As a kid, I had a favorite place to play, a cornfield near my home. It wasn't an ordinary field, it only appeared every other year, the stalks growing taller than my imagination could comprehend. My friends and I discovered it one summer, and from that moment on, it became our sanctuary. Hidden from the world, we played hide and seek, built forts, and let our childhood fantasies run wild. That first summer was magical. The field felt alive, though we didn't understand it then. It wasn't just the rustling of the corn in the wind or the way sunlight filtered through the stalks, it was something deeper, something almost inviting. But when the crop was harvested at the end of the season, it felt like a piece of our childhood had been ripped away. My friends, Dorian, Ben, and Corbin, were as heartbroken as I was. Over the next year, we drifted apart. The laughter we'd shared in the field faded into silence, and the bond between us began to fray. When summer came again, my excitement reignited. But when I biked down the road to the field, my heart sank. The corn wasn't there. The field lay barren, the soil cracked and dry. My mother said it wasn't uncommon for farmers to skip a season, but to us, it felt like a betrayal. We spent that summer wandering aimlessly, longing for something we couldn't have. The following year, I decided to check the field alone. As I pedaled down the familiar dirt road, I caught sight of the tall green stalks rising once more. My heart pounded with joy. It was back. Our sanctuary had returned. But as I stood at the edge of the field, something felt wrong. The air was heavy, the stalks unnaturally still despite the gentle breeze. And then, out of nowhere, Dorian appeared. "Dorian, what are you doing here?" I asked, startled. He grinned, his curly brown hair sticking to his forehead. "The same thing you are, Gavin. Checking out the field." His voice was cheerful, but there was something in his eyes, something dark and unsettling. "Why didn't you call me?" I asked, guilt creeping into my voice. "I didn't want to come without everyone." "Who cares about the others?" he said, his tone sharper than I expected. "We don't need them to have fun." Before I could respond, he grabbed my wrist. "Come on, I want to show you something." Dorian led me deep into the field, the corn swallowing us whole. Eventually, we reached a clearing where the stalks had been matted down, forming a perfect circle. In the center of the clearing was a bone, jutting out of the ground like some kind of grotesque monument. What is that?" I asked, my voice trembling. "It's a bone," Dorian said with a grin. "I found it here. Isn't it amazing?" I hesitated, inching closer. The bone was old, its surface weathered and cracked. It didn't look like it belonged to an animal, at least, not one I recognized. "Where did you get it?" I asked. "I didn't get it. It was just, here." His eyes gleamed with excitement. "I think the field put it here. Maybe it's a sign." "A sign of what?" I asked, my stomach churning. He shrugged. "I don't know. But it feels important, doesn't it?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. The longer I stared at the bone, the more unease crept over me. Something about it felt wrong, like it didn't belong in this world. Dorian's voice broke through my thoughts. "Let's get the others out here tomorrow night. We can play hide and seek, just like old times." That night, I called Ben and Corbin. They agreed to meet me at the field, though both were uneasy about Dorian's behavior. When I called Dorian to confirm, he denied ever being in the field. "You're imagining things, Gavin," he said, his tone cold. But when night fell, he was the first to arrive. As we stepped into the field, the corn seemed taller than it had during the day, the stalks casting long, eerie shadows. The air was thick, almost suffocating, and every rustle of the corn made my heart race. "Let's play hide and seek," Dorian announced, his voice unnaturally cheerful. "I'll be the seeker." Something in his smile made my stomach churn, but I didn't argue. Ben, Corbin, and I scattered, each finding a hiding spot. I crouched behind a rock, clutching my flashlight like a lifeline. Minutes passed. Then hours. The field grew silent, the kind of silence that presses against your ears and makes your heart pound louder. And then I heard it. Laughter. Not Dorian's laughter, but something distorted and unnatural. It echoed through the field, growing louder and closer with each passing second. I tried to stay hidden, but the sound was everywhere, consuming me. Suddenly, the ground beneath me shifted. Roots coiled around my ankles, pulling me down. I screamed for Ben, for Corbin, for anyone, but my voice was swallowed by the field. Above me, the corn parted, revealing a creature that defied description. Its body was made of stalks and leaves, its hollow eyes glowing with a sinister light. It leaned down, its jagged mouth opening wide. "Welcome home," it whispered, its voice a grotesque mockery of Dorian's. When I woke up, I was lying at the edge of the field, the morning sun casting long shadows across the barren dirt. My friends were gone. The field was gone. I never saw Dorian, Ben, or Corbin again. For years, I've tried to forget what happened that night, but the memories refuse to fade. The field hasn't reappeared, but sometimes, late at night, I hear whispers outside my window. Whispers that sound like Dorian's voice. I know one thing for certain, the field is still out there, waiting. And it's hungry. 15 years later, I still can't shake the memories of that night. The cornfield never grew back, but it left an indelible scar on my mind. I tried moving on, convincing myself that maybe I'd imagined it all, that my friends had simply run away or met some mundane tragedy. But deep down, I knew the truth. The field had taken them. And it wanted to take me too. Life went on, but every so often, I'd wake up to that same feeling I had in the field, the oppressive weight in the air, the sensation of being watched, and the faint sound of rustling, even when there was no wind. A few months ago, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. When I picked up, the line was filled with static, but through the noise, I heard a voice I hadn't heard in years. "Gavin," it was Dorian. My heart stopped. "Dorian? Is that you? Where are you?" The static intensified, but his voice cut through it, calm and eerily cheerful. "We've been waiting for you. Come back to the field." "What? What are you talking about? Where are Ben and Corbin?" I demanded, my voice shaking. "They're here," he replied. "We're all here. And we're waiting for you. You belong here, Gavin. You always have." The call disconnected, leaving me in stunned silence. I stared at my phone, my hands trembling. It couldn't have been him. It wasn't possible. But then, I heard it, the rustling outside my window. I shot out of bed and pulled back the curtain. My breath caught in my throat. Standing in the moonlight, just beyond the glass, was Dorian. His face was pale, his eyes hollow and glowing faintly, just like the creature in the cornfield. He smiled at me, that same unsettling grin I'd seen all those years ago. "Come back," he whispered, his voice muffled by the glass. "Come back to the field." I stumbled backward, my heart racing, but when I looked again, he was gone. The only sound was the faint rustling of leaves in the wind. The next morning, I did something I swore I'd never do, I went back to the field. It wasn't hard to find. The path was overgrown, but it was still there, leading me to the same spot where it had all begun. But when I arrived, the field was barren, just a patch of cracked dirt and weeds. I stood there, staring at the emptiness, my mind racing. Had I imagined it all? Was it just some childhood nightmare that had taken on a life of its own in my memory? Then, I heard it, the laughter. It started softly, almost playful, but it grew louder and more distorted, echoing all around me. The ground beneath my feet began to shift, and I saw the corn sprouting up before my eyes, the stalks growing impossibly fast, surrounding me in a matter of seconds. I turned to run, but the corn closed in, the stalks tangling together to form a wall. I was trapped. And then, they appeared, Dorian, Ben, and Corbin. But they weren't the boys I remembered. Their eyes glowed with that unnatural light, and their bodies were twisted, the corn seeming to grow out of their skin. They moved in unison, their expressions blank except for the faint smiles on their faces. "Welcome back," Dorian said, his voice low and hollow. "We've been waiting for you." I tried to scream, but no sound came out. The corn closed in tighter, the stalks brushing against my skin like cold fingers. I fell to my knees, the ground beneath me shifting and pulling at my limbs. "Join us," Dorian whispered, his face inches from mine. His grin stretched unnaturally wide, revealing rows of jagged teeth. The last thing I saw before the darkness consumed me was the sky above, the stars winking out one by one as the field swallowed me whole. They never found my body. The field is still there, waiting for its next visitors. If you ever come across a cornfield that seems too perfect, too quiet, leave. Don't step inside. Don't let it take you.